case, is it just those three panel members talk amongst themselves, then come back to you, or do they get to speak?
No, so this is what, at the hearing, the children's hearing. So you've got three panel members. They've had individually they've had all the reports and they've read them before they've got to the hearing centre. The three panel members turn up at the hearing centre, and then they wait for the family to come, and whoever else is invited, so social work, health, education, and we all sit down together, have a discussion, and at the end of that discussion, each panel member will give their individual decision, and it's the majority decision, so 2 out of 3. Which
So you
will
don't
have
get
it.
to leave and then go and discuss it with someone else?
It's all.
You're thinking the apprentice.
No, it's all with the family in the room and social work in the room and health and education in the room. All discuss it together, and I sit there trying to keep my shut. And they come to a decision based on the information they have at the minute. So they're not allowed to go away and discuss it in secret. They have to do it in front of the family.
That must be difficult, like your old school social workers, the ones that they had to retraining, but it's just not on in.
But I think most social work have really, you know, very, very adaptable to it.
Still a few ones that.
So I was talking about how the introduction of solicitors into hearings, and in Scottish Borders actually we don't see that many lawyers in hearings, and I think that's just because there isn't many of them that do that type of work. I think in Edinburgh we do have a few more lawyers. But what they try and say is, okay, yeah, the family do maybe need sometimes legal representation, but lawyers need to remember it's not a court, it's not adversarial, we are thinking about the child, so they have to conduct themselves in a child-friendly manner. So this is the guidance from the Scottish Legal Aid Board, and they are the ones that kind of look at the quality of the lawyers and make sure that they are conducting themselves in a child-friendly manner to fit in with the children's hearing ethos. So when conducting proceedings before a children's hearing, a solicitor, whilst fulfilling his professional duties, should be his or her, professional duty to his client, shall respect the ethos of the children's hearing system and acknowledge that decisions should be based on sound reasons with the best interest of the child being paramount. What I will say is, some lawyers are absolutely fab at that, they're fantastic, and they're very focused on the child, and panels quite quickly know when lawyers have really stuck to that. But you do still have maybe old school lawyers who still can't come out in with their court view, and it doesn't fit so well. And I think SLAB really needs to be on top of that. But I don't think, I think lawyers in hearings can be very helpful as long as they do stick to this guidance. And some are better than others, just like any other profession. But that's the idea behind that one anyway.
Next one?
Yeah, so this is about rights versus welfare. So this is where the human rights kind of aspect comes into it. So it's been suggested that balancing representing the rights of your client, your lawyer, against the best interests of the child can be very challenging for solicitors. So how do you balance your duty to robustly and effectively represent your client with the need to keep the child's best interests at the centre of proceedings? Is there a conflict there?
Would you not just consider the child as your client?
No, because that would be a conflict for the solicitor. The solicitor's job is to represent their client, which perhaps is maybe the mother or the father. They have to represent the client. But for the hearing, it's about what's in the best interest of the child. So how do they manage that? But I don't think it has to be a one against the other. I don't think it's rights versus welfare. I think it's about a balancing exercise. It's about getting the right balance between rights and welfare. And I think what we must remember as well is that children have rights too. The ECHR applies to everyone, and that includes children. So even though the parents have rights to not their family life not to be interfered with, the child has those rights as well. And so what you're looking at is how do we balance keeping everyone's, or not interfering with everyone's rights, but also and ensuring that we'll get what's best for the child. And it is important to remember that although children's hearings are informal, or they try to be informal, it is still a legal tribunal. We are still making legal orders, we are still interfering with people's rights, and we are the state essentially. So we do have to justify when we are interfering with those rights. And then not just in terms of the parents, so obviously one of the most important rights is a right to family life, which the parents can use, but a child has that right too. So even a child who there is concern about being neglected or abused, they still have the right to be with their birth family. So we have to justify why we want to remove a child from that family.
It's a tricky one, that one, isn't it?
Yeah. And it has changed the way the system works. But I don't think for the worse, because I think quite rightly having a rights-focused approach means that we just really need to be very sure that we are only, like I said, interfering when it's necessary and justified, and that's a crucial point, that we really need to be justifying our actions. And if you think about it, removing a child from your home, and removing a child from your parents is one of the biggest measures of intervention into someone's life you can have. Probably the only thing that tops that is putting them in prison. You know, taking a child away from a family is a huge, huge interference with people's rights, and we really do have to say we're only going to do that when we're absolutely justified and we've got good reasons for it. And I think the PCHR has just brought that to the forefront.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was going to talk a little bit about appeals, just so you have an idea. So again, rights for the family and children, if they're old enough. You can appeal to the sheriff court. So if you've had a children's hearing, the children's panel have decided we're going to put a legal order in place and we're going to put the child in foster care. And the parents said, no, we're not happy with that. We don't think that's fair. They can appeal to the court and say, we don't think that's fair. Now the judge has to base his decision, his or her decision, on whether he thinks the panel were justified in their decision making. He might not agree with their decision, he might have his own opinion, but that's neither here nor there. What he has to say is, did the panel do anything wrong? Did they make sure that they listened to everyone? Did they take all the information into consideration? Did they make sure that the child was given an opportunity to give their views? If they did everything right, you should be saying that the panel's decision was fine. You might say, I wouldn't have done that, but if they followed all the kind of procedural rules, then the decision should be upheld. However,
It's respecting their position and respecting their authority.
Yeah. If they did something wrong, for example, they didn't give very good reasons for the decision. I've got one at the moment actually. The panel the reasons that they gave were didn't really explain why they're doing what they're doing. That's not really fair, because a family need to know why they're having their child removed from them, or for whatever reason. They need to be given a very good reason. So if they haven't given good enough reasons, that might be a reason that the sheriff would say, actually, that wasn't a good decision. So what the sheriff then does, if he says, no, the children's hearing were fine, they did a really good decision, they did everything they should have done, then that's the end of the matter. The appeal goes no further. They could possibly appeal it to a higher court, but that's very rare. But if the sheriff says, actually, yeah, I think the hearing got this a bit wrong, they should have considered this, or they should have given a better explanation for this, he can either put in his own decision, but that's quite rare, because if I'm the reporter, I always ask to go back to children's hearing, and for them to have another go, essentially, and try and get it right this time. That's what normal.
Like, is it only the parents that can appeal, or if you guys then agree or social work, can they then appeal it?
Only the parents, relevant persons. Sometimes there might be, like a grandmother might be a relevant person. Again, this is getting into a whole other legal aspect, but it's usually the parents, but also the child. A child can usually only instruct a lawyer when they're about 12. It's up to the lawyer. Usually 12 and above. They can appeal as well. But social work can't, and I can't.
So if the panel decide, no, that kid's fine, it's good, then what do?
Well, hopefully they put a legal order in place in that the kid resides at home, but the social worker can go out and check. So that would be the next best thing. So what social work do? They have to respect that decision. They would continue working with the family. However, if their concerns escalate, increase, or they've got new information, they can bring another hearing. So the local authority can bring another hearing at any time that they want. So they don't have the right to appeal, but what they do have is the right to bring another hearing. But they really need to, they should only be bringing another hearing if they've got more information, new information.
Yeah.
You can't just have another bite of the cherry.
So is it like double jeopardy where we can only pay the child for the same stuff once? So if you had a concern about a child over a specific thing and it resulted in that, it was found to be not really used in legal terms, would that still be cast up if it was on the merry-go-round again? So there's something else, and well, last time you were here because of this, and that's related to that, or is it you get one shot at it?
Well, yeah, I think, local authority have to be careful not to just keep bringing something back on the same basis. If they want to bring something back for something to be reconsidered, they should have some new information.
Yeah, so it can be supporting evidence that can't keep a parent running over it. You know, like, oh, in 1985 when the child was 6 months old,
Yeah.
like, you can't do that, I guess you can't do that.
Well, no, you really shouldn't do that.
Sorry, can I just ask quickly about financial sort of view, because we're talking about lawyers and
Yeah.
stuff. Does, if parents want to get the lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
do they need to pay from their own pocket, and also how is the whole trial, is it all paid for, or because obviously some parents don't have finances
Yeah.
for all this?
So this Scottish Legal Aid Board, they provide funding to people who can't afford to pay for a lawyer. And it basically means tested, so they look at their finances. Generally, if you're on benefits, then you would automatically be entitled to a lawyer and you wouldn't have to pay for it. It's the state that pays for it.
You need proof of the benefits, though.
Yeah, you need proof of your benefits, that's right. If you have a job, you probably have to send away all your income details, and the Legal Aid Board would assess whether you can pay for a lawyer or not. If they assess that you can pay for a lawyer, you would have to pay for it. But a lot of people are able to use that fund to pay for their lawyer. Yeah?
And would it be generally defence lawyers or family lawyers are used for the legal defence?
Family lawyers. So most of the lawyers that work in the children's hearing system are specialised in family law work. None of the ones in the Scottish borders do criminal work. They only do family type work. Criminal lawyers are very different. But I think in Glasgow that might not be the same. I think it depends on the area. I think some lawyers in Glasgow might do criminal and family. Certainly the Scottish borders, the lawyers that I know, they just focus on this type of work.
So even if the child's been going for a crime, that's how all get rolling, still a family lawyer.
That's still a family lawyer, yes.
Okay.
Safeguarders, now I just wanted to bring this up because they're quite important in the hearing system, or they can be. They're completely independent from me, the reporter, they're completely independent from the panel, completely independent from social work and family. So they are appointed when the hearing or the sheriff thinks that they need someone to provide them with some more information. Perhaps they haven't been able to get the views of the child, perhaps the child is maybe 8 or something, and although they might have a view, they're too scared to come to the hearing. So maybe the hearing wants the safeguarders to go out and speak to the child. And the safeguarder will normally prepare a report. They will speak to everybody involved in the case, and they will assist the panel or the sheriff in coming to a decision about the child. And their main duty is to make a recommendation on what they think is in the best interest of the child. best interest of the child is paramount, but they will take everyone's view into consideration. And they're usually appointed where the case is very complex, or there's a lot of hostility perhaps between the family and the social work department. You know, it's usually where it's quite a complicated case that the safeguarder will become involved. And interestingly, they also have a right to appeal as well. So if for instance, if the social worker and the safeguarder said we would like the child to be placed in foster care, but the panel said no, we want the child to stay at home, social worker can't appeal, safeguarder. So I think that's pretty much all we want to cover. It kind of just gives you a broad idea of the hearing process. It can be a little bit complicated, but hopefully that's given you an idea of what it's all about. I did have a slide that said any questions, but I've had so many questions. Might have run out.
We're at lunchtime now, but does anybody have any last questions they want to quickly ask before we scamper out the door for lunch? No, they're thinking let's just go for lunch. Can we say thanks very much to Charlotte? Charlotte, if you step back, because it's going to be a rush. Lunchtime. See you later on, folks.
I never get to see it.